Hi, everyone. My name is Gebbie. I'm a principal in the solution consulting team at Medidata. And today I'm going to talk to you about becoming a sponsor of choice for sites. And there we go. So, what do I mean when I say becoming a sponsor of choice? What we're thinking about is that sites really want to work with you. They want to do a good job for you. They recognize that you're someone who's doing good research, and they really want to partner with you and take part in your study. It's really important that you have a good relationship with your sites, because they'll want to perform well for you, and they'll want to do their best work for you. A lot of my presentation is based on a survey that was released last year. It was a joint survey with Avoca and ACRP, and it was just called the Site Quality Survey. And what Avoca and ACRP did was they surveyed a lot of clinical research sites that had been working with sponsors and with CROs, and they asked them a lot of questions about how they found working with the sponsors, working with the CROs, what things went well in the studies, what things they had to do a bit more work on, and what was useful for them. So in the survey, and you can look at it, you can Google the survey, you can look at the results, but there were 4 main things that I thought were worth talking to you about today. And it's these 4 things. And we'll work through them one by one. So the first one is improving the design of the trial by thinking about the site and the patient. The second one is making it easy to conduct a trial. So the sites are the ones that are having to take your protocol and conduct the trial. And so making anything you can do to make it easier for the sites in conducting the trial can only be a good thing. The third one is making sure you're using the time of the site staff efficiently, so that they're not having to be running around the hospital, doing lots of different procedures, and that if a CRA is coming on site, they're not having to spend a lot of time with the site staff. And then the last one is looking at the study closeout phase. Now, the closeout time in a study can be really, really time critical. You might have lots of last-minute questions that you need answered. And the site, however, they still have patients to see. They still have their day job to do. So they're not as really thinking about those last-minute questions. So what can you do to help the sites when it comes to the closeout? So that's what we're going to look at today, those 4 topics. And we'll start with the first one, which is improving the design of the trial by thinking about the site and the patient. The actual study results showed that looking at the schedule of events and the procedures that are in your protocol was really important for the site staff. And also thinking about it from the patient's point of view. Because that schedule of assessments that you write in your protocol, the site staff have to take that information and conduct all those procedures on the patients. So they can't be having patients going all over the hospital, visiting lots of different departments, having lots of different procedures done all in the one day. That's not good for the patients, and it's really difficult for the sites. So the way that we do it at Medidata is we've taken a data-driven approach to designing a protocol. And with our protocol design optimization tool, it allows you to identify where you might have additional procedures in your protocol that are actually not part of any of the endpoints or the objectives of your study. We call it the line of sight, so you can link all of the individual procedures to the reason why you're doing it. The objective or the endpoint is the reason why you're doing that procedure. And sometimes you'll be quite amazed the number of times that we find that procedures are just in the protocol and there's no reason for them. So our optimization tool will help you identify those. In addition, the optimization tool allows you to benchmark your protocol. Now, what I mean by benchmark the protocol is you can take your study design and compare it to other similar studies that we have in our benchmark database. So, for example, say you were running a phase 2 study in breast cancer, and in your study, you're doing an ECG on the patient 6 times during the study. Our benchmark data may tell you that other phase 2 breast cancer studies, they only do the ECG twice, once at the beginning and once at the end. It's not telling you that you're wrong to do it 6 times, but it just points out to you, why does everyone else just have to do it twice and we're having to do it 6 times? It makes you think about, are there extra procedures in my protocol that actually we might not need? Now, for the sites, it's great because if there's additional procedures and you can remove them from the trial design, they don't have to do all those extra procedures. For the patients, it means you're not doing invasive procedures on patients that are not required by the protocol. And for you, it means that you don't have to pay for those additional procedures to be done during the study. So that's our protocol design optimization tool. The other thing that we have to think about is the patient themselves when we're designing our study. So this has become really important in clinical trials because you want the patient to have a good experience in the study, and we want to make it as easy as possible for them to take part in. So our patient platform means that all the way through the study, from learning about the study, consenting in the study, actually getting their data captured, whether it's at a visit, and it might be data that's being entered into the EDC, or it might be on a device, or they might be using a sensor to capture data from the patient. All of those things are possible within the Medidata platform, and it's all done in that one area. So all of those tools are available today, and you can be using them to make the life of a patient much easier, much simpler, and it means that they want to conduct a study, they want to be part of the study team, and they want to complete the clinical trial. They won't drop out early. Now, remember, outside the room in the foyer, we do have demo booths. So if you want to see demos of eConsent or eCo or ePro or Rave or anything up there on the screen, you can speak to some of the people at the demo booths and they'll be able to show you examples of how these works. Okay. The second area in the survey that we were going to look at was improving the ease of the trial execution. So again, in the survey, this was one of the very high scoring attributes that sites felt was really important to them. When an investigator looks at your protocol, he's trying to decide if he wants to take part. And he's looking at how easy will it be for his team to conduct that study. There was a CenterWatch survey a year and a half ago that looked at what were the biggest challenges from a technology point of view for investigative sites. And interestingly, it said on an average study, sites were using about 10 different pieces of software. And the most common issue was there was too many usernames and passwords to remember. Other things were there was too much training, and it was the same training that we were having to do again and again every time we started a new study. So at Medidata, what we've done is we've done away with that. We just have the one username and password for the site staff to log on, and then they can have access to any number of trials that they're working on. Whether it's with you or another sponsor or another CRO, they just have the one username and password, and it gives them access to everything they need to use in the Medidata world. And because all of the data is unified across the platform, it also minimizes the amount of double data entry or entering the same information in multiple places. So if you think of something like a site exists in EDC because you have the site in EDC, but if you're using a randomization system, the site will be in the randomization system. If you're using a CTMS, the site will be in the CTMS. You don't want to have that in multiple places. So at Medidata, you enter the site information once, and it appears in all the different pieces of software that you're using in your study. Similarly, if you think of the sites taking the consent of the patient, if they use the e-consent tool, that subject, when they consent in e-consent, will automatically create the subject ID in the EDC for the site staff, so they don't have to do it again. So we're doing what we can to minimize the burden on the site staff and to make things as easy as possible. And that data flowing around the platform, around the Medidata platform, makes it very simple for site staff and reduces the amount of duplication that they have to do. Now, one of the other things that's really important for sites is being paid for the work that they do. And unfortunately, in our industry, it's a very difficult process. It takes a long time for us to pay sites. And usually it can be broken down, but it's about 20 steps. The first 3 over on the left-hand side are the ones in grey. Those are the setup tasks where you're defining the budget and you're negotiating the contract with the site. But then after that, you're actually working through the payments process, which is done again and again during the study, where you want to get information out of EDC, you want to generate the costs that the site have for the work the site have done. You might have to request an invoice from the site. Then when you get the invoice back in-house, it needs to be received. If there are any tax implications, you need to add the tax implications in. And then you might make it the payment for the site staff. And once you make the payment, then it goes through that approval process to confirm that you're happy to pay the site. And then eventually, the funds might get deposited into the site staff, into their bank account. It takes a very long time, and there's a lot of very manual steps in there to do that. And that's why it takes 3 months, and that's a good estimate. Some sites have told me that it's 4, 5, or 6 months that it takes them to get paid. So think about it. If I was a site and I saw a patient in my clinic today and I did all the work, all the assessments on that patient, you're telling me that you're going to pay me in 3 months' time. Where else in industry does that happen? Where else can you ask someone to do work for you today and tell them that you're going to pay them in 3 or 4 months' time? It just doesn't happen. And it's what we think that we are going to let our sites do. So what we've done is we've tried to automate as much as possible the site payment process. And we've narrowed it down because if you think about it, the EDC data really drives the site payment process. As the sites are entering their data into EDC, and it might be visit information or it might be procedure information, that can trigger costs automatically. So every night, the system looks to see if there's any new payment triggers have been met, and it will automatically generate those costs. The system can also take into account split payments. So say, for example, you have to pay so much to the investigator, but so much to the hospital as well. So we can split the payment for you. And we can also, in countries where it's a fixed tax amount, we can apply the tax automatically. And we can also generate an invoice request for the site. So automatically you can send an invoice request out to site. They would receive it electronically, and they can upload their invoice into the system and attach it to the payment. And then we can also take, once we've got it all approved, then we can actually disperse the funds and send the funds out to the site. We've currently got customers that are paying sites within 30 days of the subject visit. So that's less than a month from me seeing my subject and doing the work to actually getting paid for it. Okay, the third thing that we were going to look at was using the site's time efficiently. So again, in the survey, for both sponsors and CROs, being able to use the site's time efficiently was really key for them. There's a lot of interaction between sponsors and CROs. A lot of that interaction is done by the CRA who's out there visiting the site. So what we're looking at here from our point of view, when we're trying to make things better, is how we can make the time of the CRA as efficient as possible when they're on site. So the site monitoring process can be very complicated, and it can involve a lot of different tasks. The monitors are busy when they're at site. So making everything so that it's data-driven, it's driven by the data in EDC, having a structured workflow for the CRA so that they can be as efficient as possible when they're on site. And therefore, they're making the best use of the site staff's time. By having that subject data in EDC drive that CRA workflow, and also allowing them to track issues and actions in the system, and have their monitoring visit checklists, again, in the system so that they can fill them in electronically, means that we can automate as much as possible of the trip report and the site communications, just trying to make things as streamlined and as efficient as possible for the CRA. And if we free up the time of that on-site monitor, it means they can focus on other more high-value tasks when they're at site. Okay. Now, one of the things that we also want to try and help you to reduce is the amount of time that the CRA spends on source data verification. Okay. In a lot of places, we're still doing 100% source data verification. But our tool, our targeted source data verification tool, frees up the time of the monitor. So it allows you to systematically assign patients to lower levels of SDV, and reducing that level of SDV in a systematic manner that's controlled and audited means that the CRAs can spend more time doing more valuable tasks on site. Things like ensuring patient safety by doing source data review rather than source data verification. Looking at things like data quality, so making sure the sites are up to date with their queries and that they're not being closed down incorrectly. They can actually spend time improving patient recruitment and patient retention by speaking to the site staff around, here's the best way to find patients, or this has been useful at other sites. Other sites have, found patients by doing this. And finally, actually taking the time to talk to the site staff about the protocol and making sure they understand your protocol. So those are ways that by freeing up the CRA's time, we can get them to focus on more high-value activities. So the last thing on my list was looking at the study closeout, or the end of the study. So again, this scored quite highly in the survey. And if we think about the activities that scored highly, that study closeout, it's one of the times where it's really high pressure time for sponsors and for CROs. There's usually lots of last minute queries that need to be answered, and you want them done quickly because you want to get that database locked and you want to start to get the analysis done. But the site staff still have their usual day job to do. They're still seeing patients and treating patients. So anything that we can do to minimize the amount of work at the end of a study can only be a good thing. Those last-minute queries that we raise are quite often because it's the first time that the statisticians are getting to look at the entire data set. The first time they're looking at the data overall and including data from other sources like lab data or data from other external systems. And when the statisticians look at the data set as a whole, they sometimes find problems or issues. And the issue for sites is that when they find a query for a patient, that patient might have completed the study 3 months ago, and their notes have been sent back to the archive in the hospital. And to be able to answer the query, they have to request the notes, get them back from the archive in order to find out and answer the query. So it can be a real problem for sites when you raise last-minute queries. But it happens a lot because we leave the statistical look at the data till the very end. And what we're saying is that it's much better if you can have an ongoing statistical data cleaning strategy. And our centralized statistical analytics software uses a number of inbuilt statistical algorithms to automatically detect errors and anomalies in the data. It gives you a nice, easy-to-view patient profile. There's an example one there, where you can have tables of data, you can have graphs of information, but essentially it's one place where you can go to look at all the data for a patient. It makes data review really easy, and even for a medical monitor who's wanted to look at the safety of patients, the patient profile can give them a really nice overview of the data for one particular patient. There's also a number of different visualizations and dashboards in the tool that allow you to prioritize where there might be more of an issue or more of a risk for that particular data set or for that particular site. And it will show you through those dashboards where there might be a particular place where you need to focus your efforts or a particular site that you need to pay more attention to because they've got more issues or more problems in their data than other places as well. The nice thing about the tool is it doesn't matter where the data comes from. So you can have your data in Rave EDC, you can have lab data from an external vendor, you can have other data with other external vendors. Our centralized statistical analytics tool will take all of that data together and look overall at the entire data set that you have and start to highlight problems using those statistical algorithms. What it will also do is it does it with very minimal setup. You don't have to tell it what to look for. So if you think of your edit checks in EDC, you have to tell the EDC system, I want to look at this date and compare it against that date, and they should always be the same, or they should always be, one should be greater than the other. You don't have to do that with CSA. CSA will automatically look for anomalies and problems and issues in the data. It's automatic error detection using the inbuilt statistical algorithms. So by doing this ongoing throughout the study, it means that you're minimizing the effort that's needed at the end of the study by the site staff. And as I've said before, anything that we can do to reduce the effort and reduce the amount of work at the end of the study, it just reduces that burden for everyone, for the site staff and also for you. And then the other thing that we're doing at the end of a study is we're looking at the end of study media. So at the end of a study, you have to deliver to the site staff the ability to archive all of the eCRFs. It's usually a CD that's sent to the site, and then they'll file it away wherever they're going to file it. Interestingly, many years ago when I was a CRA, and it's not just yesterday, it was a long time ago when I was a CRA, there was a survey that came out that said if you visit a site 1 year after the closeout visit and ask to see the study documentation, about 40% of sites can't find it. Okay, so what we've done is we've done away with providing them with a physical CD or a DVD, and we've given them an online access. So it's electronic access to the end of study media. So they just have a portal that they can log into, and then they can see all of the eCRFs. So there's nothing for them to file, there's nothing for them to lose, but we still make them confirm receipt of the username and password, where they have to log into the system and confirm that they can access it and they've got access to it. So it really, again, reduces the burden at the site staff at the end of a study. So, hopefully I've given you some ideas of how you can become the sponsor of choice with your sites. And hopefully I've also explained to you how Medidata can help you with our clinical platform. The sites are really critical to the success of your trial, and anything that you can do to help them do a good job and to make their lives easier can only be a good thing. Remember, outside in the lobby at all of the demo stations, if you want to see any demonstrations of any of the software that I've been talking about, then there's people there that can help you do that. Thank you.